To me, I've got a lot of numbers written down here. You just call them out and I'll play, because they had a roulette over there that you could play 10 cents a card or whatever it was. Son of a gun took them for $800. They just call out the numbers and he was marvelous.
Wow.
Great guy.
Where was this filmed, do you remember?
It was filmed in Jackson Hole, outside of Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Those are the Grand Tetons then.
Grand Tetons. How can you beat it? Beautiful. This is America.
Wow. So you weren't far from civilization then?
Oh, no. Matter of fact, we were living in Jackson Hole. And we practically took over the entire town. But it was a wonderful shoot, and I'll tell you why it was a wonderful shoot. The director, Delmer Daves, one of the least known men in all of show business. He was a writer, a director. He wrote all kinds of pictures and everything else, directed this one. And really a gentleman of the first water who knew what he was doing with his camera and showed it. You could see this beautiful picture that he made.
Yeah.
He was that kind of a fella, and invited me to his home one day, and I was flabbergasted because he'd been on a lot of shoots out in the country, you know, out in the desert and everything else, and he showed me where the lightning had struck the sand and had fused it. You know, and he had all kinds of fused sand in his collection and everything else. It was amazing, you know. So he not only used his time to make a picture, but also went out and enjoyed life.
Yeah, wow. He had an interesting life, too.
I tell you. You know, I'm sorry to see that Westerns aren't being made anymore for the simple reason that people have gotten away from it. And I just came back, believe it or not, from the Cowboy Hall of Fame in Wyoming, Oklahoma, I should say. And I tell you, they're dying because of the fact that they don't have any good Westerns anymore. And why?
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe you can explain it to me.
Oh, I wish I had an explanation for that. People, I mean, they get an audience on television when they make new ones for cable TV, because they say it's an older audience that still likes Westerns.
Exactly.
Younger audiences don't go for them. I think if they just had more of an opportunity to see them or see actors they like in them, they would do that.
Unfortunately, today, I don't mean to intrude, but today with the use of computers, all they give you is sex, more computers, more people killing other people, and a lot of explosions. And they call it entertainment. Is this entertainment?
Let me ask you something. You made your fair share of Westerns in the 50s and 60s, but you didn't exactly grow up in a Western atmosphere, did you?
Well,
Where did you grow up?
in Connecticut.
Okay, so had you ridden a horse as a boy?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I was
No,
wondering.
I got thrown by a jackass one time. And when I went on the first horse was a picture with Randolph Scott. And they said, "Do you ride?" I said, "Like the wind, sir." They never said no, after all, it meant the job. But you rode, and you made believe that, you know, you did pretty good. And I learned how to ride, and you had to. Because
Was that just a matter of practice and experience, or did you go for lessons, riding lessons?
No lessons. And then I learned watching other people. See Glenn Ford?
Yeah.
He always rode like this. The most magnificent rider you've ever seen. He and I'm trying to think of a name and suddenly it escapes me, but he was a tremendous rider and came out of Canada, and I guess that's all he did when he was a boy.
Yeah.
A heck of a good rider, and a good guy too.
Rod Steiger was a city boy, though, wasn't he?
Rod Steiger was Rod Steiger, any way you look at it.
Yeah.
But in those days, everybody had to make westerns. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so it wasn't like you specialized. It was one of the things that came along.
Oh, absolutely. We made westerns because, hey, number one, they were there.
Right.
And number two, it meant a job.
Yeah.
And so we were very happy to go out and on locations and ride horseback. And well, I was in one that I claim is one of the best in the world, and some of it shown is the Wild Bunch.
Sure.
And
although when that film came out, a lot of people were very upset
in
by
the
that.
beginning they said, "How this is terrible, all this bullets and shooting and everything else." But I've often said, would you rather see it on your screen, or would you rather see it in your city streets? It's better to see it there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And see how terrible it really can be. Whereas, when we see it, even on television today, as we're having dinner or something, and they say, so many people got killed, and they say, oh yeah, it doesn't concern us until we see it. And then suddenly it becomes a little bit closer. And I talk too much anyway, but
You're doing fine. So, but you really did, in the Western area, you really did run the gamut from traditional Westerns like the Randolph Scott film
sure.
To the Wild Bunch, which was the extreme of Westerns. And still, I think, kind of the extreme of Westerns, even today.
I tell you, I've enjoyed making Westerns, and I wish to goodness they'd go back to it because, well, you can see it, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And even though we did Ride Crazy, and everything else, but and we had like this picture that Delmer Daves made. He wrote this one, and I thought it was an exceptionally good Western. And
Now, but this film though was right after you had really ascended to stardom. I mean, just what, 3 years before this you made From Here to Eternity,
Right.
which is a great part, but that was still a supporting role. A great supporting role, but a supporting role. But here, 3 years later, you're above the title.
I never looked at it that way. I always looked at one the gag, and this is the way we make pictures, or we made pictures at one time, where you were just one of the group, and you enjoyed making these things because you worked together. And you'd be surprised when people work together how easy it is to make a picture. It's all give, and no taking away. You just give. And this is what makes life so interesting. Give, and you'll get even more back.
You're still making movies, yes?
Absolutely.
What was the most recent thing you did?
I just finished one last week called, what the devil was it called? It was called,
Nightclub.
what is it?
Nightclub.
Nightclub. Can you imagine me forgetting on the picture of Nightclub? But it was all about these young people that get into trouble, and they're given an assignment to do community work. And they're put into a home where these people are assisted living, And I happen to be one of the assisted living. And so these kids one day, they see everybody just laying around, and it's just terrible. And so they decide, we're going to put in some music. Well, they put in this jazz music, not jazz, but rock and everything else. And the people don't want that, All they want to do is take it easy until Don Imus comes on in the morning and then listen to Don Imus. But I said, having been a former nightclub owner, I said, maybe I can help you. So we go ahead and we start in, and the first thing you know, we're serving liquor, and we're having a great time. Everybody's dancing and having a wonderful time, and everybody's wondering, nobody died today. Isn't that funny? It's wonderful,
That's good. So positive thinking.
Yeah. It'll be out sometime this next year, and you'll see me trying to do things. But,
do you dance in the movie?
No, I didn't know.
Okay, just asking.
But I've also made another one with Bruce Willis called Red. And the RAED stands for Retired Extremely Dangerous. And you know, Bruce Willis can be extremely dangerous.
Oh, that's neat.
Wonderful man. Really, I must tell you, I saw him years ago when he first came on the Sybil Shepherd show. And he captivated me. I said the same thing about James Dean one time when I saw Jim Dean before he came out to Hollywood. I said, man, this guy's made it. He's got it made. And he is. He's just a very, very wonderful human being who enjoys working. And we're very lucky, believe me, to have him.
When you first worked in film, you've been on stage, yes? You've done some theater work?
I put 10 years in the Navy,
Yeah.
came home out of the service after World War II, and then my mother one day said, well, you gonna get a job or what? You know? And I said, okay, so I went out looking for work. But it meant locking yourself up into a factory for about 10, 12 hours a day. And back in New Haven, Connecticut, that's all they had was factories. And I'd take my lunch and I'd go out because I was used to the open, 10 years in the service and everything else, and you'd kind of get away from that kind of business, you know? One day I came home and I said, Mom, for 2 cents I go back in the service, do my other 10 years and get a pension. At least I'll have something. And out of a clear blue sky, she said, have you ever thought of becoming an actor? She says, you always like to make a damn fool of yourself in front of people. Why don't you give it a try? And I said, Mom, that's what I'm going to be. And would you believe? 10 years later, I had an Academy Award.
When you started out and you started working with some pretty big actors, some well-known actors, who did you watch? Who did you learn from being on the set, just watching the way they acted?
Actually, on stage, I used to go, I was never asked to do anything until one day they said, we want you for a certain part. But I used to go down at night after working all day long, building sets, painting sets, washing sets, doing everything, and working in camera, not camera, but in lighting and everything else. Then at night I go down and watch them act. And I discern for myself whether I like this one or like that one, or what I do here, what I do there, would I do this, would I do that? And this is the way I learned. And I only had about 3 months, less than 3 months of schooling, and that was all I had. And I just learned because, number one, I wanted to learn. Number two, it was the easiest thing in the world for me. And period, here I am. Crazy, huh?
All right. What would you tell us about observing close up, watching Spencer Tracy at work on Bad Day at Black Rock?
Spencer Tracy, my goodness. I'll never forget. I had supposedly knocked him down already, you know, in that scene where my car pushes him off into the sand. And now the next scene, the real scene that I was working on for the first time, he was coming in and he's driving with one arm, you know, and everything else. And I'm standing up there on a hotel porch, and Lee Marvin is alongside of me, and suddenly he blocked out. And all I could see were 2 Academy Awards coming right to me. I forgot my name, who I was, everything. Until suddenly he got up there, and I looked at him and I gave him the line. I said, well, if it ain't McCready, the All-American Roadhog, you know. And we did the scene, and it goes in. And the director said, cut, print, okay, over here. Everybody went by, said, like this, you know, to give you the, okay, kid. And he came outside. I said, you know something, kid? I like you. He says, you look a person right in the eye when you talk to him, don't you? He said, doesn't everybody? You know, and we got along fine. And one day I'm leaving I'll tell you kind of story if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
One day I'm leaving to go to my cabin, where Delbert Mann, the director of Maltin, was waiting for me, and Patty Chayefsky, the writer. He said, hey, he said, where are you going? If anybody leaves here early, it's me, I'm the star here, you know. And I said, sir, they gave me permission to go down. What are you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna read for a part. Read? He said, you don't read anymore. He says, you're a star, you don't read anymore. I said, out of your mouth to God's ears. And he wanted to know what it's all about. When I told him the story, he said, don't worry about it. You're gonna get it. Everything's fine. Okay. So I went down, and of course what I did with them is another story, but when I came back the next day, I had a big grin on my face. He said, you got the part, huh? Yes, sir. Had a boy. Okay. And the next year I beat him up for an Academy Award.
Getting a word of encouragement from Spencer Tracy, you could dine on that for a long time.
Oh, boy. He was the actor's actor.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it. I'll never forget what he did in Nuremberg, trial at Nuremberg. It's just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. And too bad they're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone else you just mentioned is someone that you worked with more than once, who only lately people I think are coming to appreciate. I think he was taken for granted for many years because he always made it look so, the way you do, you make it look simple. That's Lee Marvin. Could you tell us a little about Lee Marvin?
Lee Marvin, that rascal. We started on a Randolph Scott picture. And he had a little tiny thing about this big. We all headed up to Lone Pine, California to make a picture with Randolph Scott. And I come in, there were two great big suitcases, and got on board this thing. Where you going with all that stuff? I said, well, I'm from New York, and I was living in New York at the time. And I said, I've got to take it with me. Oh, okay. And he'd always give me this. Every time I'd do a scene or something, he'd go, I'd say, you rascal, I'll get your wagon one of these days. I did too. But anyway, we made a picture, one of the pictures that we made concerned, he was playing a hobo in Emperor of the North.
Yeah.
And thank you, I thought it was a good picture too. And he was a hobo and I was the conductor of the train. And I found a picture of him as the hobo and I said, here kid, sign this, will you? He said, sure. To Ernie, love, Randolph Scott. I still got the picture.
That's great.
But that was Lee Marvin. He was the kind of a fellow that he knew what he was doing. And I'll never forget, one day, he had just come back, we were getting ready to do the Dirty Dozen, and we were in England. Thank you. And we were in England, and we were leaning up against this brick wall, kind of, getting at the sun up a little bit because it had been cold. And we were talking, and he just got back from getting his Oscar, and we went back and forth, A fellow walked by from the show, and he said, I wonder what two Academy Award winners have to talk to each other about. And without missing a beat, he says, you'll never know.
Nice.
That was Lee Marvin.
That's sharp. That's sharp. Good for him.
Yeah.
Here it is, we're in the year 2010, and Marty is more than half a century ago, just before you made this, really. And, but it's an unforgettable performance. Mm-hmm. Unforgettable. Do people still talk to you about it? Do people still come up and talk to you about it?
Oh my goodness, yeah. They always talk about Marty and McHale's Navy. Of course, that comes up with all other pictures that I made as well. But Marty and McHale's Navy are the two that they talk about the most. And I must say that I saw Marty myself about a week or so ago on the Turner Classic Movies, and it stands up pretty good. I said to myself, that fellow was a pretty good actor.
Well, you can pay yourself that compliment, that's true.
Thank you, sir.
I don't even know how to ask you the question, but Marty keeps so much inside. He bottles up his emotions so much.
Sure.
But you feel it, as an audience, you feel it for him. Did Delbert Mann or the writer, Patty Chesky, give you any direction? Did they tell you anything of how they felt Marty should be, or did you just have to sense that out for yourself?
No, I never said a word. This is what intrigued me, because I'd always say, is it all right, boss? He said, okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay, so I just continued on what I was doing, but the writing was such, you don't find that kind of writing anymore in this world, believe me. Patty Chayefsky was, I asked him one time, I said, you're an actor. I said, how come that you didn't do this part? He said, if I were any kind of an actor, you'd think I wouldn't? But he said, you're doing all right, just keep going. And never said a word, nothing. And until the picture was over, and then he said, okay, kid, that's it.
Well, obviously you weren't doing anything wrong. Or he would have said something if you weren't doing it to his liking.
Yeah, the only thing that I really... you remember the scene where I leave the girl after I first met her? Yeah. And I walk over there and I'm saying to myself, doggone, I got a date. Holy mackerel, this is really something. And they were all undecided on what to do. What, should I do this, should I do that? I said, have you ever wondered about asking an actor what to do? They looked at me, who are you? And I said, how about let me try? And I don't like to, say that, hey, I did this or that. But that was my idea of hitting that sign. Taxi!
Great moment. Great moment. Yeah.
That was Marty. That was him. He and I felt that throughout the whole thing. And of course, when I was a young man, believe it or not, I was pretty bashful. I really was. I told her it's true. I was pretty bashful, and I remember. I'll give you something that happened to me one time. My aunt stopped a car outside of the railroad station. She said, run into the railroad station, see what time it is, because there's a big clock up there, and come back and tell me, and I'll set my watch. I said, I can't. What do you mean you can't? What's the matter with you? Just run in, take a look, come back out, and, tell me the time. I can't. Why? I said, well, people think I'm crazy. We're just running in there and come running back. Well, people look at me like I'm nuts. She actually had to get up and do it herself. Because I was that shy. I didn't know how to dance until I was, good Lord, way into my 20s. And then only because they dragged me out there made me. And then I started to win prizes. There you go.
Wow.
But I really lived Marty as a young man. And I could feel for this man exactly what he went through.
You knew who he was.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I guess it could be said that you really were in the right place at the right time with the right part.
Exactly.
And
yeah. Of course, Ron Steiger did it. Steiger. He did it. And
I'm sure most of you know, Rod Steiger did it as a live television program.
Yeah, he did it as a live television show.
Before they made the movie.
Yeah, and they wanted him again because naturally they didn't know who to do it. And he was doing Jude in Oklahoma. And that's the part I wanted.
Yeah.
Judd, not Jude, Judd. And that's the part I wanted, and I said, son of a gun, you know, that rascal got it. But along came Marty, and they asked Bob Aldrich, who was the director of the picture that we were making at the time, called Vera Cruz, and we were down in Mexico. And the Heck Lancaster company was figuring out who could we possibly get. Well, Delbert Mann came down, the director, and he had a script under his arm, and Bob Aldrich said, may I read the script? I said, sure. He read the script, and about a week or so later, they had a big party down there, and they said, Bob, you read this script, didn't you? He said, yeah. He said, somebody said, you know who could possibly play that part? He said, you know, I know of only one person that could possibly play it. Yeah, who? Said Ernest Borgnine. What are you, mad? This guy's a killer. He kills people for a living. They don't, no. Don't kid yourself. He's an actor. So we went on to prove it different.
So when you and Steiger worked together on this movie, you had missed out on the part you wanted that he played in Oklahoma.
No, I'd rather have this part here. But
at the time, were you? I mean, was there any sensitivity between the two of you?
Oh sure, yeah, oh sure. And one day we kind of fooling around together, you know, and we did this little tiny scene together. And his hair stood up, and then he said, oh, "Boy," he said, "look, let's play the brothers Karamazov." He said, "I'll play the father." I said, "You would take the best part."
That's great. You've had so many great experiences, and you're still having them.
Oh sure.
Obviously, you don't live in the past. You live in the present day.
Yes, although I like to live in the past as well. I think that if you forget the past, it's a bad deal.
Yeah.
I like the, you know, you see these old time pictures like TCM, and boy, you say to yourself, there, but for the grace of God, I could have gone. You know what I mean? And it was one of those kind of things that kind of intrigues you and keeps you busy and keeps you going. Although I live in the present, I'm very practical in today's world, and so I look at it in a kindly light, but I would like to look back a little bit and say, hey, I remember when.
Yeah, that's true. No, everyone here agrees with you about that. Let's have a big round of applause.